Hi, my name is Colleen Myers. I'm a recovering judgmental church lady, and I'm glad you've joined me for this episode of the Smack Dab podcast, living smack dab in the center of God's will. As you know, I serve with Engaged to Go Ministries, and you can find our website at raveoutreach.com. It's called Ministries Plural because there's a number of different things we do besides going to raves to share the gospel, share God's love, help kids in trouble, and rescue kids that we find in danger at massive rave parties across the United States. But one of the other things that we do is we offer commission camps. And this came about because of our heart to engage believers, to engage the lost. And we found out that there's a real vast majority of Christians. I'm speaking this pretty confidently because the stats back me up, the Barna stats. But the vast majority of Christians don't know how to share their faith. And so we started commission camps for believers to come and up to the mountains where we live and have a fun, adventurous weekend. We take young adults and older out on Jeeps and out onto the lake. And all the while we are doing teaching on how to share your faith. And the mountain where we live offers many illustrations to help us communicate our message. And so it's like a training weekend, pretty intensive training weekend, where we raise up believers to do our job, which is the Great Commission. And we've had a lot of success with this so far. It's a fairly new program that we're running. So if you're interested in getting some friends together and having a commission camp for you and maybe 5 other people, we would be willing to talk to you about that. So you can reach us at raveoutreach.com. And but anyway, one of our recent commission camps that we hosted for a weekend was a group of ladies that came. They flew out to us in California from Colorado, and most of them were older ladies. There were a couple that were younger. It was a fairly large group, larger than we normally do. It was awesome. And what a amazing experience we had with them, teaching them how to share their faith, particularly with this generation. All the things that we've learned as we've gone as older moms and dads on outreaches at raves, we were able to communicate that to them. And our goal is not to raise up tons of team members to go with us to the raves. Our goal is to raise up believers who know how to share their faith when they walk out their front door and just in their daily lives, wherever they are, to look for opportunities, and then how to share the truth of the gospel in love with this world, this hurting world who needs to hear so much. And on this podcast, that's really the goal of the podcast too, is it's very missional, it's very kingdom oriented, it's very let's encourage people to fulfill the Great Commission in their lifetime. And that's why we call it the Smack Dab podcast, because we want people to live smack dab in the very center of God's will. And that means that you are fulfilling the Great Commission. So I've read this passage many times before, and I'll read it many times again, but we're just going to revisit it real quick here. The Great Commission passage, which has probably 4 or 5 other passages that really back it up. But the main Great Commission passage we find in Matthew 28, verses 18 and 19. In verse 18, we find out that this is the very last thing that Jesus said before he left earth. And so, like we often save the most important things for last when we're saying goodbye to family. We say, drive safe, I love you. Those last things that we say are the most important. So I think the last thing that Jesus said when he was in person here on earth is probably pretty important and probably worth listening to and remembering. So here we are in 18 of Matthew 28. Jesus came and told his disciples, I have been given all authority in heaven and on earth. Therefore, go and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. And that first word there of that commission is go. And I think there's a reason for that. Jesus was very intentional with every word that he spoke, and go is very much on purpose. And he also in other passages said that he was here to teach us how to fish for people. He used fishing as an example. And so at commission camp, the very first stop on our Jeep adventure that we make on the morning of day 2 of commission camp is at a lake. And I get there first, and the rest of our commission camp team brings our guests, and they join me there at Lakeside. And I have chairs already set up for everybody, and they sit on the shore. And I am in the water at this point by the time they arrive with hip waders on. And I don't know if any of you have fly fished before, but it's very common for fly fisher people to wear hip waders so that they can go in the water and go where the fish are to fish. And so that's how I'm set up when they arrive. And the first thing I do is after they're all seated on the shore, I I asked for 2 volunteers usually, and I have 2 fishing nets sitting on the shore. And I asked 2 of our commission campers to grab those nets and stay where they are, stand on the shore, and to fish. And they look at me puzzled, and I say, go ahead, fish. Beg the fish to come out, jump out of the lake and jump in your net. And they look very puzzled now, and I say, it's okay, just try it, so stand where you are and beg the fish to jump into your net. And of course it doesn't work, and everybody's laughing, and they sit down, and I say, okay. And I have my own net, and I reach down into the water because I'm standing in about almost waist deep water. And I reach down into the water with my net, and I pull up a fish. Now, I'm not that great of a fisher person, but I've planted a fish there. So now if you come to commission camp, I've kind of blown my little trick here, but I'm sure everybody guesses that I've already put a fish in that water. I'm not that great at catching fish with a net. But anyway, I pull up that fish, and the whole purpose of this is to illustrate and to lock in people's minds that if you're going to fish, you need to go where the fish are. So if you look at what Jesus said when he said, I'm going to teach you how to fish for people, and then he gives us the Great Commission and he says the word go. Those words, like I said, were very intentional. Jesus wants us to go where the fish are. And so this is why we go to massive rave parties in 6 states across the country, because that's where our fishing holes are. That's where we go to fish for people, and we go where they are. And people have been shocked by that. They're like, Christians have never done this before. And when God called us to this ministry 16 years ago, we were called to it because there was no one going to these places where there were thousands and thousands of young adults, and no one was going. We were the first ones, and to this day there's no one going to rave parties like our ministry goes. The way we go to these people is unheard of. And so, but God knew, and God showed us, and so we went, and we have had so many opportunities because we are going to where the people are. And so that first word is so important. And that first word, go. After the people sit down, after they've attempted to get the fish to jump into their net, I love to just talk for a few minutes about what evangelism and discipleship traditionally looks like in our country, and why it's not working to do it that way anymore. So we talk about how in our country, Christians sort of have been conditioned that they don't really know how to share they don't really need to know how to share their faith themselves because they pay a pastor to do that. And so traditionally, they think that they just need to invite people to come to church. But if they have any contact with this generation at all, they know that that's really a hard ask, and it's a hard sell. There's been a lot of church hurt in past generations and in this generation, and people aren't going and willing to try going to church anymore. And so while we have tons of great pastors who know how to share their faith and do a great job doing it, um, a lot of times the pastors are preaching to the choir if they're sharing the gospel at their churches. There's not often non-believers there. And so it's getting kind of ridiculous to think that that's how we should evangelize these days and share the gospel by just begging the people to come to where we are, is about as ridiculous as begging the fish to jump out of the lake into our net, right? Jesus said, go, because we're supposed to go where the fish are. And there's nothing wrong with inviting people to your church. I'm hoping that you keep doing it, but there's something very wrong if that's the way that you're sharing God's love and evangelizing people. If you're thinking that that's how you're going to fulfill the Great Commission, I think you're mistaken by not going yourself and knowing how to share God's love yourself. And so we start off commission camp on that second morning this way, because it's so important to get this concept in our heads that if we're going to be good fishers of people, we need to go where the people are. We need to be willing to get a little messy, get a little wet. Ministry's messy. And we need to be willing to get a little smelly. And you wouldn't believe when we get back from raves what we look and smell like sometimes because we've hugged thousands of kids. Sometimes at these outreaches, we'll have kids lined up for our free mom hugs, and we've prayed over these kids, and they've cried on us. They've ugly cried on us, and we have all kinds of stuff on our shoulders and on our shirts, and we've gotten kind of messy reaching these precious people. But when you fish, you get messy. And the people that Jesus was talking to when he said, I'll teach you how to fish for people, they were fishermen, so they knew what that meant. And so I want to encourage you not to try to stay so unaffected by the fish that you're fishing for, by not doing the work yourself and just expecting your pastor to do it. Please consider going instead of just begging the fish to come to your comfy place where you are. Please consider being willing to go where the people are to share God's love with them. They're worth it. They're worth it. Jesus thought they were worth dying for. And so we should have that view on people too. Thanks for joining me today. Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Smack Dab Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and check out our latest episodes.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Smack Dab Podcast. If this has been a blessing to you, please consider helping us continue by making a donation to our sponsor at engagetogoministries.com.